I already had my PSL on my mind as I entered Peace Corps. I knew that was going to be my next step. So I knew Peace Corps was going to be my next step after AmeriCorps. I knew PSL was going to be my next step after Peace Corps. While my program, but they also gave me an additional scholarship for my service in both programs. That was great. And I did 2 semesters in New York, and I was able to do a semester in Peru and a semester in the Philippines. So, but I loved like you said, the time that I spent in IPSL. If you know, if you are a self-starter and you have some sense of direction, the IPSL program, especially the grad program, will be excellent.
This podcast series is sponsored by IPSL Global Engagement. And I had no idea about this organization and wish I would have known about them after my service year. Because you can take your AmeriCorps experience international. You can customize social justice-focused master's program in international development and service or community organizing and social activism. You can chart your path to create positive change in the world. Serve and learn with international organizations working to build justice in healthcare, education, human rights, the environment, and more. You can earn a master's that opens countless opportunities, gain the practical skills and community-based development to be an active agent of change. If this is something that's interesting to you and you are an AmeriCorps alum, click down in the description box below and sign up and get some more information today. Thank you, IPSL Global, for supporting the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. Jamal Lee, you're an AmeriCorps alum and a Peace Corps alum, and we're here today to talk specifically about IPSL Global, which we'll get to. But how did you find out about AmeriCorps, and how did you get involved?
Yes, great. So it's funny, I kind of fell into my AmeriCorps experience. I was about to graduate from Georgia State University, and I was looking for work. And one of my friends, he was about to go on an interview. I thought it was a work study opportunity. The program was housed on campus out of the School of Education in this special center called the Crim Center. It was named after the first Black superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools. And so we went up there, and he did his interview. He introduced me to the program director of the Jumpstart program, Ishay Collins, and she and I, during the interview, kind of hit it off. She was from Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. And at that point, a lot of people were moving here that weren't from here. And, just a lot of transplants, and the fact that we both were from here, we kind of connected on that level. And she loved the fact that I was actually from an underprivileged community, because Jumpstart specializes in preschools and nursery care centers that are in low-income areas. And I was familiar with all of them because I grew up in them, cousins grew up in them, and I was slightly older because I was about to graduate. And we've been close ever since. And then I started the experience, and I loved every moment of my Jumpstart experience.
I'm curious, what was your degree? What was your background?
My degree was psychology and Africana studies.
Oh, well, psychology is perfect for preschoolers. What's behind the preschooler's mind?
And I had no intention of looking at pre-K. That wasn't something that I was super interested in, but I knew I enjoyed being around my little cousins, nieces, and nephews anytime someone has children. And I am somewhat of an imposing force, like my presence. I play football. I'm a big guy. And so sometimes people will assume that children will be afraid of me. It's something the young lady I was dating at the time was like, the kids are going to be afraid of you. I was like, no, they won't.
No.
And so the energy that I bring was just, infectious. So they love me.
And I think something you said is so important, and we talk about this with service, is like having folks from the community serve in the community is so important. And unfortunately, it's hard to find because being an AmeriCorps member is not bringing in a lot of money. It's not bringing in, a lot of resources. So it's difficult to make it accessible for everybody. But good on the recruiter to find you and for you to feel the affinity to the folks in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I mean, I knew from the time that I met Ishay, her telling me about the program, like I found out what the program was in the interview. And I didn't know what it was, but like I said, I needed work. I was about to graduate, and this was a part-time AmeriCorps position, which is why I was able to then go on to another AmeriCorps experience after that, because I didn't fill up all of my hours.
So did you do like 300 hours or something? Or was it
I believe it was 300. I only did 20 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
for folks that are just tuning in for the first time ever, welcome to the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And one of the things that T. Jamal is talking about is that there's different terms of service in AmeriCorps. You can do a 300 hour, you can do a 1200 hour, you can do a 1700 hour. After your jumpstart, how did you find the second opportunity and like why? I love the laugh. Okay. And I think there's a story behind this.
it was literally, so the Crim Center was the home of a lot of different programs. Not all of them were AmeriCorps programs, but literally next door to Ishay's office was the other AmeriCorps program that I ended up doing. So I met the other AmeriCorps people while I was in Jumpstart. It was Alexandria Cooley was the program director of Team AmeriCorps, and TEAM was an acronym kind of like STEM, but backwards it was technology, engineering, and math. And so Team AmeriCorps, it was started out of a grant to AmeriCorps, started at Georgia State on campus, but they had partnerships with Atlanta Public Schools and DeKalb County Schools, primarily with high schools for students in ninth and 10th grade who had fallen behind or were below math level, were below grade level in math. And so we went in and we were like student aides during the day. And then we also hosted a after school program for those students who we identified during the day and that the teachers would say they need to be in this with you. And so we were with them pretty much all day. Then after school, we would kind of go back to the basics. In elementary school, they teach a lot of memorization. And if that's your way of learning, and if you need to learn actual what the concept is, I had already graduated. So like I said, Jumpstart was my last year. I was just coming up on graduation. I needed something to bring some extra money in. And then I was looking for something else, and I had seen the office right next to Ishay, and Ishay and I still have a relationship today. I went up there to visit, and she told me that there was an opening with Team AmeriCorps, and so I applied for it. I eventually got hired, and I joined the team like a month after school had already started. So the team was already formed. Everybody already knew the colleagues and everything. But we were split up into different schools, and we would have our collective meetings on Fridays to go over the results of the week. So we were in schools Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, I think we were in school for half the day, and then we went back to Georgia State, I think after lunch, and kind of did a debrief of the week and preparation for the next week.
Wow. So that's when service hooked you. And
I was already hooked because around that time, I was already looking at starting my own nonprofit, which is why when I came across Jumpstart, I was like, oh, this is a way for me to kind of understand how nonprofits actually function. And around that time, I was already interested. So I'm a chess player. I saw AmeriCorps, looked it up. I was already interested in Peace Corps.
okay.
So I
Yeah.
was like, I could use my AmeriCorps. I was like, I can use this AmeriCorps experience to make my Peace Corps application a lot more, thick, fulfilled, because everybody is going to have a college degree. That's not going to be a separator
Yeah.
for me from other candidates. And at that time, Peace Corps was very competitive. You had to be open to go anywhere. And so I was like, all right, I need to get in. I need this to work. So let me pad my resume with a lot of service while I'm, at home, so that when they see me, they're not just saying, oh, this person just graduated from college. They don't have any, experience of doing anything else other than like working at restaurants. That was what
Right.
I'm doing before. So while I was still so I did Team AmeriCorps 2 years. So I did Jumpstart 2010, did Team AmeriCorps the first year so 2010 to 2011, I did Jumpstart. Fall of 2011 to spring of 2012, I did my first year of Team AmeriCorps, and then 2012 to 2013, I did my second year of Team AmeriCorps. Oh, while I was still so I did Team AmeriCorps 2 years. So I did Jumpstart 2010, did Team AmeriCorps the first year so 2010 to 2011, I did Jumpstart. Fall of 2011 to spring of 2012, I did my first year of Team AmeriCorps, and then 2012 to 2013, I did my second year of Team AmeriCorps. So between my first year and my second year with AmeriCorps, I did my Peace Corps application. I knew it was going to take about a year. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that. By the time I finish this, they should kind of end and start around the same time, so I won't have any gaps of
Right.
something just left out in the wind, not knowing what I was about to do next. And then heard about this program that looks for AmeriCorps alum. It was in Atlanta. It was somewhere next to Hands on Atlanta. They were doing a panel discussion of IPSL graduates and their AmeriCorps experience and how it tied in. And I went there and I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'm looking for something that's going to take me out of the country. Right. And so I thought about applying for IPSL before Peace Corps, but then I was like, oh, they're looking for AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. I was like, I'll do this as soon as I get back from Peace Corps. So I already had IPSL on my mind as I entered Peace Corps. I knew that was going to be my next step. So I knew Peace Corps was going to be my next step after AmeriCorps. I knew IPSL was going to be my next step after Peace Corps. While I am doing AmeriCorps over the summer, I find out that I got selected to Peace Corps and that I was going to be going to Guinea, West Africa. And as soon as I got that, I started taking French lessons. And so that was June, and then my departure date was December 2nd, 2013. So we all left our cities and we flew into Philadelphia for our orientation on December 2nd, and then we arrived in Guinea on December 4th. I was one of the only public health volunteers that actually didn't work inside the clinic. I worked at a youth center in the country, and I was doing youth development, and I did some malaria seminars. HIV wasn't really an issue in Guinea. It's a Muslim country. A lot of people get married young. There are a lot of myths about malaria. There's a lot of necessary education that we have to bring to debunk a lot of myths. Because malaria heavy season, it's rainy season, there's a lot of puddles that attract mosquitoes.
Right.
That cause malaria. So we did seminars around that, but I wasn't inside of a clinic. I started doing my community assessments and talking about the programs we were about to do. And then I applied for a position as a Peace Corps response volunteer in Mali so that I could be in the same region where I was and maybe do the Peace Corps response and still be in communication with the people in Guinea and try to do something in the same area. And for whatever reason, didn't get chosen for the Peace Corps responder. I was like, I already know the language. I was just in the region where I lived in Guinea was only like 2 hours from the border of Mali. I was already in that region where I knew the actual language of the people, which was Malinke Bambara. So that surprised me. I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to move on. And I
Yeah.
thought about doing State Department. So I looked into that. And I was like, okay, I want to do that right now. And then I was like, okay, this is allowing me to go to grad school earlier. So then I applied to IPSL in November of 2014. I actually paid to get my nonprofit started also in November of 2014. I got my 501c3 paperwork, started everything with the state, and I got accepted to IPSL, got introduced to Thomas and Omar. They interviewed me, and then I started school in January.
Yeah, so it sounds like the experience in Peace Corps, you said you're a chess player. Sometimes the board opens up and you're not expecting it and you weren't quite ready to make that move just yet, but it was kind of in the back of your mind and you're like, let me just double check. But yes, I think this is where I want to make my move. And so my understanding is if you are an AmeriCorps alum or a Peace Corps alum and you want to continue and get a graduate program certification or a non-traditional certification, this is seriously the organization that you really want to look into because they help to catalyze your education award and that they work with the members to make sure that you're going into a program and a community that you are choosing. I was joking with them and I said, it's kind of like choose your own adventure, right? Remember those books? It was like, turn to page 44 if you didn't go through the left door, whatever.
Like you said, use my AmeriCorps funding as well as my Peace Corps funding for continuing education. Put that toward.
Hey, sorry to interrupt this interview, but I wanted to shoot you over to some of the IPSL experts so you can get a better understanding about the program. We'll be right back with this interview, but take a listen. It might be something you're interested if you're an AmeriCorps alum or if you're interested in serving in AmeriCorps.
IPSL used to stand for the International Partnership for Service Learning. We are a founding organization in the service learning movement. Because service is at our core, that's a natural fit for AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps alums. Everything that we do is about intentional, ethical engagement in communities abroad. And we've been working with AmeriCorps for a long time. We're a school of national service. We have posted countless AmeriCorps alums in our programs, both the degree programs and the non-degree program.
But they also gave me an additional scholarship for my service in both programs. That was great. And I did 2 semesters in New York, and I was able to do a semester in Peru and a semester in the Philippines. So, yeah. But I love, like you said, the time that I spent in IPSL. If you are a self-starter and you have some sense of direction, the IPSL program, especially the grad program, will be excellent because they allowed me to build the program that I wanted.
Yeah.
I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to develop my new nonprofit. I wanted my thesis to be surrounded in the work that I was about to be doing. It was, very much focused on service work. It was a degree. It was a master's in science in international development and service.
And you were able to zoom out and work with the folks at IPSL, say, when I leave this program, this is what I want to get. So when you had mentioned that you started a nonprofit, and what I want to get to, like 2 more just specific questions about IPSL is, what doors opened during and after that program, and how did you feel supported? Because this is a different way of thinking about education, right? Different way of thinking about a master's program. So when you were going through the IPSL program, what doors did you see open for yourself? And then what and then how did you feel supported? And then what kind of resources were you provided with afterwards?
So the doors that opened immediately were opportunities to speak and present research at conferences. So I did 3 conference presentations while I was in the program. 2 were with um, the ethnic studies, and they have a journal as well that I was able to publish a piece of my thesis. So I was able to get published in a scholarly peer-reviewed journal.
Wow.
I was able to present twice in both my semesters in New York. I went to Tucson, Arizona to present, and I went to Starksville, Mississippi to present at a conference. Both of those conferences opened up a lot of doors of me getting introduced to, because these were ethnic studies and they were attracting international speakers. I was able to build relationships with some professors and department heads in Nigeria, South Africa, and a lot of different places that I wanted to take my relationships through my nonprofit and build upon. And then I was able, during my semester in Peru, IPSL actually was having their conference in Peru, in Cusco. So I was in Lima, but they paid for me to go to Cusco and present at the conference. And there I was able to connect with even more people because the IPSL conference was all about international development, and different people from around the world were there. Got a chance to go to Machu Picchu while I was there. So that was excellent. Those were the immediate things that opened up while I was in the program. The way that I had a lot of room outside of the classes that I was taking to go out and try to do my programming in New York and even in the international locales where I was, to kind of build up interest in my program. While I was in Peru, I linked up with a Afro-Peruvian organization on the ground there that I still have a relationship with to this day because I was in IPSL. So
Yeah.
those are things that.
No, and it sounds like with the flexibility of the program that you're able to figure out where those important connections and resources come from, or important connections come from. To land the plane a little bit, when you reflect on your experience with IPSL, what do you want? What would you, people that are listening to this right now, and people who maybe are AmeriCorps alum or Peace Corps alum, and they're like, but didn't know this program existed, or folks that are like, wait, if I do a service year, then I'm more qualified for this program. What would you say to those folks about specifically getting into the IPSL program?
I would say definitely the service helps. I've had people in my cohort who didn't have service, but the service definitely helps. It helps because, like I said, the program is what you make it.
Mm.
You create the programming. There are classes, there's an outline of what you need to do, but there's so much more opportunity beyond the classroom that you can do. And if you tell the people what it is that you're trying to do, they'll nudge you in the right directions, connect you with the right people.
One other thing you may want to know about the IPSL program is this. We work with our students individually to craft something that meets their goals, not only for their education, but also, very importantly, for their career. We build in a lot of flexibility. There's 3 entry points. Participants or students who want to come to the grad program and are admitted can come in either January, April, or September. We call it spring, summer, fall. And that works with our people's lifestyles. We try to be flexible and responsive to the needs of people in their particular life. They can't get away at a certain particular time. It's also really flexible because students can choose their. We work with our students individually to craft something that meets their goals, not only for their education, but also very importantly for their career. Now, back to the interview.
Yeah. And support it wholeheartedly. I never felt at any point wasn't supported or that people didn't understand quite what I was trying to do. And if they didn't understand, they would ask questions to get better understanding. Right?
Yeah.
My service was about my community. And there weren't a lot of people from my community in leadership in the program, but I never felt like they were undermining me or trying to belittle what it is that I was doing. They understood. They were very open-minded. They were very inquisitive. And genuinely inquisitive, not questioning me, but ask questions to understand better. And I think,
yeah, for sure. And one of the things that Ariane Newton from the program mentioned, it's learning outside the four walls of the classrooms from people who are actually working in the field. Something that is intriguing about this program and that it's probably lifting up to people's radar now is that it's a really non-traditional way of getting a master's or going through a master's program. And it requires, like you said, somebody who's willing to step into kind of the unknown, maybe have an idea of what they want to do, but also be adaptable. Lastly, I think the question is, what's a message or inspiration do you want listeners to take away from this conversation, specifically IPSL first, and then also leaning into service?
You mentioned it, actually. Adaptability is the answer to both of those things.
Love that.
Service and being able to get through this program or program similar to this, where there is a lot of flexibility. International development, traveling in foreign countries, if you're not adaptable, you're going to suffer. You're going to have a horrible time. Things aren't going to be exactly how you are used to. I love the fact that I did not go to an English-speaking country.
Mm-hmm.
As Americans, we don't understand how American we are until we leave. So when you leave here, you are very ethnocentric without even trying to be. The language barrier was important because if you're a volunteer, whether that's Peace Corps and you're international, or you are a person who is going domestically into a neighborhood that is said to need your help, you're coming in already an unequal position. Sometimes volunteers have a savior complex. And I would say throw that away, because the people have knowledge intrinsically. Like, you're not coming there to rewrite everything that they know. Not everything that they do is wrong, right? And not everything that we do is right. Coming into a place where you don't know the language, you need them before they need you. You're like a child. You can't talk. They're teaching you the customs, what to do and what not to do, how to speak, who to speak to in what way. I was like a toddler when I got to Guinea. I had to learn how to talk again. I had to learn how to say what to who, right? Before I could ever help them with the service that I was there to provide, they had to help me. It created balance of power that I don't think always happens in service relationships. It's impossible to go there arrogantly. I take that with me everywhere that I go. I was also on the other side of receiving service because of just where I grew up. I've seen people into my community to help us, and I've seen people who were genuine, and I've seen people who weren't, and I already had that. But that experience of having to be a toddler, right, to humble yourself before they know you're there to help them. You know you're there to help, but you know you can't do it if you can't speak to anybody.
Right. Exactly.
So adaptability was there in that aspect, but it also translated in everything that I did after that. I needed to be able to adapt to changes. Like, I was supposed to go to South Africa. It wasn't available. I needed to go to the Philippines. it had to be quick. I had to make a decision. I was supposed to be in Guinea for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
For 9 months, I had to flip and figure out, all right, what am I going to do next? So I was always able to bounce back when there seemed to be some type of back step or whatever it is. And I think that helped me get through the program seamlessly because I had a direction, but that doesn't mean that everything that I planned went the way that I wanted it to. And I just had to keep moving.
So I would be remiss if I did not ask you, you mentioned this nonprofit. As we wrap up this great conversation, what are you doing now, and how much did IPSL really help you get into the position where you have your nonprofit? And what do you want folks to know about your mission, your vision, your passion, your purpose?
Right. So the name of the organization is called African Unity Initiative, and it's about empowering people in the African diaspora to know that we don't always have to be the ones with our hands out. A lot of our issues we know the answers to. We just have to feel strong enough that somebody's going to listen to us and take us seriously. So the organization is a tool for people who already know what's going on in their communities to provide a voice and resources to create that little bit of nudge and push and provide a platform for people to feel comfortable expressing those thoughts. And then for the people in the African diaspora to have a direct relationship to one another, to hear from each other first without having to go through the propaganda news cycle of what's going on in a country or with a certain population. We know what's going on in Nigeria, in Haiti, in Atlanta, in wherever, in Peru, with our people directly from them, so that by the time the news gets it, we know how to filter out what's not real. So when I was in Guinea if I watched the news in 2014 about Ebola, Ebola was killing everybody, and if you breathe the air, you're going to fall over dead. I was there on the ground, and I know that what I saw on CNN when I came home was not what was happening. That's what I want to create, an opportunity for people to be able to tell their own stories, to understand that their voice means something, and they don't always have to wait for somebody else to come save them.
Hey, Jamal, that's such a great focus and mission and purpose. And this has been a great conversation. And your many streams of service are so impressive. And for folks that have made it this far and are still listening, please understand that doing 2.5 years of AmeriCorps service and some Peace Corps service and then rolling into the IPSL program, it really can be looked at as a chess game. And I like how you explain that. Are there any last tidbits or thoughts that you want before we totally wrap up here?
I would say service is very rewarding if you go into it with the right mindset and open to learn from the people that you are serving as much as you expect them to learn from you. It is very much a symbiotic relationship. And there are relationships that can fulfill and form for the rest of your life. Be open to it.
I couldn't say it any better. Thank you all for listening to the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And if you are intrigued about the IPSL program, we'll have all the links down below in the show notes. And in the meantime, find your purpose, find your passion, and just stay true to yourself.